Welcome, sir, to the Nigerian and Diaspora online radio and TV show. We are so honored to have you. We have a special VIP, very, in Nigeria, we say very important, honorable guest today.
Absolutely.
If I may chime in there, I I think that's one of our problems, that everybody's a VIP.
Not everybody else, not everybody. And once they hear your bio, they will understand why you are a VIP. There's a difference. You are original. You're not China made.
well, you can't. I mean, when you talk about his bio, his bio will take me the whole of this interview to be able to go through it. But what I can say is that we have an impeccable, nation builder right here with us, that goes by Ambassador Fabian Badejo. He's one of our fathers in the Caribbean, someone that has achieved a whole lot. He speaks about 7 different languages: English, French, Spanish, name it, and the rest of it. He's a highly intellect, and I mean, like I said, I can go on and on and on. He had his work for Nigerian government, represented Nigerian government in foreign overseas, as well as did a whole lot in literature, as well as in St. Martin Island, worked with the Prime Minister, did a whole lot of work in terms of translation and changing a lot of literatures into different languages and translating a lot of literatures into different languages. I mean, I can go on and on and on and on, but I will actually give him the floor to be able to tell us who he is, and so that the audience and the listeners will really hear from the horse's mouth. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us this opportunity to interview you, and we look forward to have a very constructive conversation. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, my brother Collins, and my sister Tomi. It's a pleasure to be with you guys, and it's been following the work you've been doing, so keep up the good work. Now, one thing you can say about Nigerians when they're out of Nigeria, or rather, this is my own belief, that you really become a Nigerian when you step on the plane and leave the country and go elsewhere, outside Nigeria. That's when you become Nigerian. When you're in Nigeria, you are still identified by your ethnic background, whether you're Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, whatever. That's generally how we identify ourselves at home. But you become a Nigerian when you crossing that immigration line, and you give your passport. They say, where are you from? You say, from Nigeria. You never say, I'm from Ibadan, or I'm from Enugu, or Jos, or wherever. You say, I'm from Nigeria. So I think, I want to make that, statement there, so that those of us in the diaspora, I claim that we're more Nigerians than those at home.
I agree.
And I think Collins asked me to say a few words about myself. Well, it's always difficult to talk about oneself, but I was born in Lagos many rains ago. And I went to school, started primary school in Jos, ended up in Ibadan, went to Government College Ibadan for my secondary school. And from there, I left for Spain. That was in 67, 68. Went to Spain to study. Actually, my intention was to do engineering, but I flunked the first 2 years. So, and I was really kind of ashamed to go back home without anything. So I ended up doing liberal arts. And thank God that was kind of my calling from the very beginning. So that's how I ended up doing Spanish literature and Hispanic literature for my master's. And then I came back home worked at First Tax 77, you know, and ended up at the Ministry of External Affairs as External Affairs Officer grade, I think 8 at the time, which is, you know, the career path, and was posted to Spain at the time. So let me correct, you know, I never rose to be an ambassador, but I'll accept that position any day. I
Well,
left.
so I believe you're still an ambassador because you are represented.
Right. I left Spain. Actually, I served under the, I think he's late now, the former ambassador of Nigeria to Spain then was Ambassador Isemeka, for whom I had a tremendous amount of respect. He was, you know, a diplomat's diplomat, you know, and he commanded so much respect, not just, you know, amongst Nigerian fellow diplomats, but even amongst the foreign diplomats who were stationed, posted to Spain. He was regarded as, you know, one of the best for sure, you know. So Olusemeka was my head of mission. He was the ambassador, and you know, we did quite some work together because at the time Nigeria was just establishing resident ambassador in Madrid in Spain. So we had to buy the building, the chancery, buy the ambassador's residence, and you know, buy a number of properties there and set up the mission from scratch. So you know, he was excellent. I think eventually he became Minister of Foreign Affairs, External Affairs, later down his career. So yeah, that's who I learned from. You could say that. While at the External Affairs, Ministry of External Affairs, my partner, my colleague, you know, we were in the same office for a number of years, was the former president of the Senate, His Excellency Adolfo Suavara. You know, so Suavara and I were, you know, up to today, we're still in contact. We, you know, we're still very good friends, and we ran, a sense, the whole Ministry of External Affairs from a small department together. You know, we're in charge of reviewing all the annual reports from the various missions of Nigeria abroad, and recommending, you know, measures to be taken and all that kind of stuff. So yes, I did serve the country at that time to the best of my ability. After I did that, I left and I went to teach Adekile Grammar School in Ibadan. And from there, well, the story goes that, you know, I just went on the plane again and came out. Ended up in the Caribbean, and I've been in here now in St. Martin for the past, well, over 40 years now. So, yeah.
See, that's why I said you are really the true ambassador, because I will consider you as our resident ambassador in the Caribbean. So, you know, with all due pleasure, thank you so much for telling us who you are, you know, what you have done for Nigeria,
yeah,
and as well as your vast experiences and also your interactions and, you know, good friends that you were still able to keep in touch along that way. I know it's not easy.
I know.
But it speaks volume about the kind of a person you are, the man who you are. You know, somebody that have been through so many places for so long and still keep in touch and remember vividly exactly with the people that he or she interacted with. That tells you a lot about that person. It tells you that the person really does appreciate mankind as well as he appreciates working with people. So going into the questions, I know you have seen what happened in the Nigerian election in 2023, you know, starting from the presidential to the state assembly. What can you really say about it?
Well, there isn't much I can say about it. It was flawed. From every report that I've read, unfortunately, I wasn't, you know, on the ground there, so I cannot say for sure, you know, what took place. It was obviously flawed in many respects. I think there's still, some legal challenges to the results still to be heard in court. I don't know, quite honestly, that, compare the elections now to the elections that former President Trump claims was, flawed also. And I cannot speak to the amount of irregularities that there might have been. One thing strikes me though, if the Labour Party could have won in Lagos, won in Abuja, and won in so many other different places, I think that speaks to something changing in politics in Nigeria.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's not easy to come into somebody's backyard, so to speak. And that was, Lagos was supposed to be Tinubu's backyard. He was governor there for 8 years, and still has a lot of influence there. And if he lost there in Lagos, then something is shifting in the politics of Nigeria. And I think that's a positive. I don't see it as a negative, I see it as a positive thing. It reminds me of the days when I was growing up, and there were all these election campaigns all across the country at the time. I grew up in the days of, when Nigeria had 3 regions, the North, the West, and the East. There wasn't even any Midwest then, So I grew up at that time where you had somebody like Obafemi Awolowo campaigning all over. I was in Jos when we would go out in the field to pick up pencils and pens and all that kind of paraphernalia that dropped from the sky. And growing up as a child, as a little boy, then you wonder, wow, where all this good is coming from, right? And,
yes,
right. And even then, I remembered, Zeke of Africa, our first president, who, I believe he had won in Lagos, at the time too, So Lagos has always been a very cosmopolitan center for the whole country. And so I'm not surprised that, the changes that we are anticipating began in Lagos, right? And then, of course, we know what happened with the first general elections in the country. No party won outright.
Yes.
And so we ended up with a coalition between the MPC, with the Northern, Tafawa Balewa and all the rest of them, coming up the NCNC of Zeke, and placed the Action Group AG of Awolowo in the opposition, at the federal parliament. But since then, things have gone south, I would say, for politics in Nigeria. Not, for the love of me, understand that we don't realize that the system that we inherited, the political system that we inherited, was never meant to work for us. So it was a system of divide and rule that the British colonialists, imposed on us, and that way they were able to manipulate this against that one. Oh, you don't see your tribal marks; they're different from his, and all that kind of stuff. And that has been the bane of our political life in Nigeria up to today. So that if you don't speak my language, if you're not from my area, you're automatically suspect. There is no reason why the president of Nigeria cannot come from Kutuwenju, the north. There's no reason why that president cannot come from Umuahia, or Umuahia. There's no reason why that president cannot come from Ikene or wherever, and all the places in between. We need to be able to build a country, and I thought we were on track to doing that, in which we see ourselves as brothers and sisters, as belonging to the same world, in spite of differences in language and customs and religion and all that kind of stuff. You know, I grew up in a, my family is a perfect what I call it, Nigerian family. I think about half of us are Muslims. The other half are Christians. You know, I have a bishop, a Catholic bishop in my family, right? And they are Muslims, you know, that, you know, when Ileya comes, you know, everybody celebrates Ileya with the Muslims. When it is Easter or Christmas, everybody's, you know, so that has kind of disintegrated, and the divisions, the wedges have been driven through religion, through language, through, you know, I believe, for example, if we really truly want a united Nigeria, there's no reason why the average Nigerian child should not be able to speak the 3-4 main languages in the country. There's no reason why at all.
Absolutely.
I started speaking some smattering of Igbo while attending school in Jos, because my best friends then spoke Igbo, right? They spoke Yoruba better than me. I mean, the same Wabara I spoke to you about earlier, you know, Adolphus Wabara, the former Senate president, his Yoruba is better than mine. The same Olusemeka, you know, went to, who graduated from UI, who was my ambassador in Madrid, his Yoruba was much better than mine. As a matter of fact, I'll give you, you know, a bit about Olusemeka. While we were in Madrid, that year was the year when I think the US went on a national campaign to Russia out of the Olympics. I don't know if anybody remembers those days anymore. Yeah, for some reason, you know, but they wanted Russia to be banned from the Olympics. So everybody, you know, was campaigning through their missions all across the world, you know, to Russia campaigning to make sure, especially that the African countries did not go with the US with the ban, right? So it was the Moscow Olympics, you know, the US was trying to engineer an international boycott of the Moscow Olympics, you know, at the time. Well, the Russian ambassador to Spain came to our ambassador, you know, Mr. Olusemeka at the time. And I was privileged to be, you know, his secretary, sitting down next to the ambassador and translating, you know, from Spanish to English and English back to Spanish for him, because, you know, my degrees are in Spanish.
Okay.
And the Russian ambassador would speak Russian to my counterpart who came with him, you know, speak Russian to that one. That one will now translate from Russian to Spanish, for me to translate now from Spanish to English. And my ambassador found that weird. We didn't know what they were saying because they were speaking Russian. Next thing, Semeka started speaking to me in Yoruba. So I would now have to translate from
correct,
Yoruba
guy.
now
Correct.
into Spanish.
Yes.
And, you know, you know what? In the end,
Yes.
everybody started speaking English.
I can imagine.
They knew they could speak English. They knew English very well. So
Absolutely.
when I
They
translated
know
into
English, but they refuse.
Yes.
Because, and I like that picture. So we should not override that point, because I've always, you know, spoke on that. And especially being born and raised here in America by Nigerian parents. My mom is, you know, have Bini, have Yoruba. My dad is Yoruba. We also have Igbo in our family. So that I grew up in my household. We're hearing broken English. We're hearing Bini. We're hearing Yoruba, you know, fluent Yoruba. And my mom named us. Even she got a lot of backlash, my mom and my dad then, you know, and I'm born 81, and say, why didn't you give them English names or biblical names? She'll tell them, no, those biblical names are actually Jewish. We are Nigerians. You know, my child is Oluwatomi Loba. I'm like, Mom, and then you gave me like one of the longest Yoruba names. You know,
Yes.
so, and she would say, no, you know the meaning of your name and be proud of where you come from. You are Nigerian American, you're Nigerian first. So, and I always used to think, even working at, you know, in diplomatic rooms and, you know, the United Nations, I always admire when Russians speak, they know very good English. Some of them schooled in America.
Absolutely.
They speak in their language. Chinese speak, they speak in their language. But
Right.
when we go, and I'm like, if you're a president, whether you're comfortable in Yoruba, Hausa, whatever language you are, you should go. They have translate us.
Exactly.
But we always, you know, so it's very honorable that your ambassador was able to look at the dynamics and say, no, we're gonna switch it up.
Right.
And then they now got uncomfortable. So they were uncomfortable, making you all uncomfortable.
Exactly.
So that, yes, I really wanted to highlight that. That is very strategic, and that's still very uncommon to now in the diplomatic.
Definitely. And we know, you know, I'm glad that you work at the UN and I can say we know, you know, how much is lost in translation, right? Sometimes deliberately so. So in this case, you know, if we didn't know what they were saying in Russian, right? But they understood what we were saying in English.
Yes, absolutely,
right?
very well.
Right. So when we realized that, when my ambassador realized that, he switched to Yoruba, and like I said, his Yoruba was much better than mine. But honestly, I mean, my sisters always, you know, laugh at me when I speak Yoruba. Because they say I've lost it completely, right? So here he was realizing what was going on, and he just made the switch to Yoruba. And you could see the two Russians looking at each other and saying, like, you know, they don't know what we're saying, you know. So they could not ascertain then what I was translating from Yoruba into Spanish for him to translate from Spanish to Russian for his own ambassador, you know, if it was the same, if it was, you know. So quickly everybody switched to English. Their own request.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. I wish, you know, he kind of answers to one of the, it's more of a guide to one of the questions that we have here regarding the young and upcoming diplomats on how to deal, navigate the waters and the rest of them. You know, I'm glad that you really raised up this issue, because it's not just the issue that you raised all along, but you said something that also caught my attention, that we are proud of Nigeria only when we leave Nigeria. Within inside Nigeria, you can't stop somebody. If you stop somebody from, say you stop somebody on the street of Lagos and ask him where is he from, he won't tell you he's Nigerian.
No.
He will tell you he's from, I'm from Enugu, I'm from Onitsha, I'm from that. We tend to be a little more ethnic, you know, within inside Nigeria. But as soon as we leave Nigeria and made it a foreign place, we'll say, this is normal Nigeria. So it's something that I also really picked up while you were giving your, you know, speech at the very beginning of this interview. Please, what role do you think that Nigerians in diaspora can play in terms of developing Nigeria? And how do you see this idea of diaspora voting? Do you think it's something doable?
Yes, of course it is doable. Other countries do it, you know. If you're a US citizen, you can vote in Abuja in a presidential election, you know, and those votes count, you know. You could be in Germany, you know, you're in the US Army, at the Army base in Germany, you can vote and your vote counts. So it's doable, you know, it's been done by other countries. It's not a new thing at all. But even in small St. Martin here, you know, in elections here, there was a time, you know, when they call them absentee ballots. You know? So those who are outside, you know, whether they were in Europe or in the US, were able to send in their votes. You know? Now those votes counted too. They were tabulated and, you know, become part of the whole election cycle. So it is possible, and I think it should be done. I think where the problem is that it is also possibly a loophole for fraud, and that can be guarded against if you do it today, especially with all the technology. You can do that electronically, but it can be open to fraudulent practices. Depending on who you have, you imagine the number of Nigerians in New York or in ATL or wherever, or in London, Paris, name it, and they have to go and vote at the embassy. There must be a way in which they can vote, and the sanctity of their vote can be guaranteed. And that is possible today with the technology that we have. I think one of the problems arising from this last election is the whole technology that was used, also uploading the results instantly. That wasn't done into reports in several polling booths. But is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it something that I would recommend? Yes, because we have stake in that country still. Many of us still have family there. My mother is still alive, and she's right there.
Wow.
Yeah, I have my sisters there. The whole family is there, basically. At least more than half of the family is still in Nigeria. So we have a stake in the development and in the future of the country. And even when you may think that you don't have your immediate family, there anymore, everybody is out, in Europe or the US or wherever else, you still have a stake, because everywhere you go, you're still identified as that Nigerian, and you don't want to do anything that's going to bring shame to your country. You don't want to be involved in anything that's going to, cast any kind of aspersions on the country that we call ours, right? And at the end of the day, if tomorrow, America says, hey, they want every one of us out, well, we've got a country to go to, right? Even though some of us already might have, the American passport and all that stuff, but the point I'm trying to make is, yes, to those two questions, the role of the Nigerian diaspora. As a matter of fact, I mean, when you check it, and it's easy to Google, just from the economic point of view alone, the amount of remittances, foreign exchange remittances that Nigerians in the diaspora send every year to Nigeria is incredible. It's a very huge, we're talking of billions of dollars.
That's true. It is a huge stake. Absolutely.
Right. So just to keep your family, maybe it's $100 that you can send every month, but that $100 becomes, quite a sizable sum of naira, when it's converted. And, average salary of in Nigeria is probably surely less than $100, right? So if you get $100 in your family every month from your brother, your sister, your cousin, your father, whoever is outside, that's a support that you're getting. It's not coming from the government, and it's not coming from Nigeria, right? So Nigerians in the diaspora support the Nigerian economy in a very big way. That's one. Two, in terms of visibility, I think in spite of all the negatives that, Nigerians have had to experience being outside the country, the 419s and all the rest of it, the vast majority of Nigerians in the diaspora are doing their best. They are making the country proud in every sense, whether it's in sports, whether it's in the sciences, whether it's in academia, whatever, in every aspect, and then you practice say, oh yeah, that's a Nigerian, in music, for example. I mean, we've taken over the world with Afrobeat, Nollywood is all over the place. There's hardly any household in the Caribbean that doesn't have a Nollywood movie. You know, so
That's great. That's great. We have changed the narratives a lot.
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah, definitely. So that needs to be recognized. You know, and I think any government in Nigeria that fails to recognize that, capitalize on it, they're just being stupid. Plainly. Now that was just how I put it. Because listen, Burna Boy was scheduled to perform in this tiny 37 square mile, 100,000 people island in the Caribbean. He's now going to be in St. Kitts next month. St. Kitts is just about half an hour away from the mountain where I live. He's performing at their music festival. He's the headliner there. Burna Boy is all over the Caribbean. For him, it was P Square, it was Bracket, it was all these other guys. So
Absolutely.
we have a lot, and we have been doing a lot in contributing, not just to the world in general, but particularly to the image of Nigeria outside the country. So we need to build on that. We need to build on it more. And the only way to do that indeed is to, attract, those Nigerians who, doing us proud in every area, bring them back to the country to see what they can do, to help us, Then you got to be careful with the politics. That's, I think, one of the things that scares most Nigerians abroad, that is most Nigerians in the diaspora, is get entangled in all this politics at home, and then it becomes, who do you know, where are you from, and that kind of stuff, or, who do you back? No, we can revolutionize that country, believe me, in 10 years. We can turn Nigeria around in 10 years with the right people, in the right places, given the free hand, not, all these, entanglements in all this local, politics and, who chop and who don't chop and, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
We are serious about ourselves and about our position in the world, because they will tell you, I mean, all the statistics show it, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in the US, Nigerians are brilliant people. Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Okay? And it doesn't matter what part of the country you come from, you have brilliant Hausa, scientists working outside.
Absolutely.
So the point I'm trying to make is that we have a resource that we're not tapping. The question should be, why is it that we're so good when we're outside, when we're back home, we can't seem to get it right? Why?
I know one thing there is also, just to add to what you're saying, if you listen to most Nigerian politicians right now, you barely hear people talk about the allegiance to the country. You barely hear people talk about, I owe allegiance to my state. People talking about, oh, I'm a party member, I owe allegiance to the party. And when I look at it, I'll be like, hold on, who is the party? The party is
yeah.
I mean, your people didn't elect you there because you're a member of PDP or APC or Labour Party.
Yeah.
People elected you because they believe you have their best interest in heart.
Yeah.
So your allegiance should be the people of your state or the people that you represent or Nigerians in general. We all know all our politicians, they come overseas. They come for different, lectures and good governance trainings and name it whatever you can call it. You can't tell me that they don't enjoy security, good roads, amenities, and the rest of it. Why can't you replicate that on your own state? If what stops you making your state to be a role model? I was talking to a good friend of mine when he was talking about, Nigerian leaders flying to London to go and discuss about Nigerian issues. I was like, how many times have we seen Macron and the Prime Minister of Germany and Belgium traveled to Africa to discuss about European affairs.
No, yeah. Well, you're very right about that. But here's my take on all of that. I think, quite honestly, if you ask me, if I had a magic wand, or if I had any authority to make this happen, one of the first things I'll do is ban foreign travel for all Nigerian politicians, especially when it has to do with medical attention or sending your child to school. Well, if you cannot provide good enough schools, good enough medical establishments in Nigeria, well, too bad. You will not travel, not on taxpayers' money, to no hospital in the UK, in the US, or wherever for any kind of medical intervention. Now we're even going to India. In my own time, you didn't even dream of going to India for anything like that, right?
Thank you.
Right? So, to me, there will be an instant ban on that. Secondly, that whole issue of going to talk about issues that concern us in foreign countries, like especially in the countries that colonized you in the first place. Listen, just from my own experience as a former diplomat, the first thing you're thinking is that hotel room booked not?
Exactly. Thank you.
So how secure is that? You have no clue who is listening to your conversation, who is listening into what you're doing or watching what you're doing in their own country. So that's another thing. Secondly, or thirdly, all these people, I was making that not long ago, that we talk of corruption, right? And there's corruption all over the world,
Absolutely.
The level we've taken it in Nigeria that is absurd, right? How does a snake eat billions of naira? Where? That surpasses, I'm a literature person, right? I couldn't even imagine that.
Somebody giving such an excuse.
Nigeria is the place where the impossible becomes possible.
It's just, I never, fathom that. Then, I'm saying, all right, you stole some money. Well, use it to develop your village now. Why would you take your money that you stole from Nigeria, take it to
and take it abroad?
Yes, go bank it in a Swiss bank or in a French bank or in a bank in Dubai or wherever,
Yes.
That's our money that you've given them to develop their own country. You don't need that. And then you turn around and you ask for aid. Well, the aid they give you is still your money.
Your money and your resources. Yeah.
It's not even just asking for aid. They take the money that you stole from your people, give to their own people to develop the economy, and they turn around and impose visa sanctions.
Of course.
On your citizens, so you don't come in.
Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
How can you have billions of dollars stashed away in a Swiss bank and your village doesn't have electricity, it doesn't have water? You can't even drive on a good road to reach.
We don't even have to go far. When I was in Nigeria, I was, a Zimbabwe diplomat came, and on our way to our meeting, he saw the long queue at the gas station. So of course, this is his first time to Nigeria. He said, are they giving a discount on, usually like when you see a long queue in other countries, either somebody's giving out something for free or, at a discounted sale price. And I now told him, no, sir, it's full scarcity. He said, what does that mean? So I was like, wait, Zimbabwe, he said, Nigeria is rich. Like, he said, don't you guys have oil? He said, I don't understand what you mean, full scarcity. I said, petrol scarcity, ain't no gas. I said, yes, us that work at diplomatic mission, when I work with the US government, we can, we have a filling station there. But even during the full scarcity was limited. They'll say, okay, if you have 2-3 cars in your household. You can only full up one. So it just, and then, so that's one. So that was a shocker to him. Then two, I also told him, I said, oh, we don't even have no refinery. So we sell this oil, other people refine it, and then they sell it back to us.
We have 4 refineries that we've pumped money into over and over, and nothing happened. We're talking about electricity. They've pumped billions and billions into, trying to, get the power lines up and all that kind of stuff. And still, dealing with, in my time, it was called NEPA, never expect power at any time. And Nigerians are creative, and I guess it's a coping mechanism, right? We make fun of everything. We laugh at everything. That's why comedy is such a big thing in Nigeria now, but in all seriousness, if we want respect in the world, right? Not just for Nigeria, but for Africans in general.
Yes.
We need to get it right in Nigeria.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you.
We need to there's no two-twos about.
Yes.
I mean, there must be, we call the giants of Africa and all kind of names we have for it. If we don't get it right, we're not doing any favor to the Cameroonian. We're not doing any favor to the guy from Niger or from the Dakar in Senegal or from even Accra, Ghana, name it, because the outside, the first thing is see you as African.
Yes.
Right? Oh, you're African.
Right. Exactly.
Right? So for Africa to get it right, for Nigeria to, we need to get it right so that Africa can be respected. I think that is also important to stress, because sometimes we're so parochial in our thinking, and we're looking just at the country, and we're talking about, oh, let's split it up. Honestly, there was a time maybe I was even in favor of let everybody go their separate ways, but not anymore, because quite honestly, the possibilities that we have as a unified country is greater than us splitting up, right? I must address that. I don't want to be a big fish in a small pond, right? The bigger the pond, then let's all swim in that pond, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And the kind of respect that you're going to get, is only going to come when they see, look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. There is nobody in their sane mind who is going to ignore a market of over 200 million people. Nobody. No way in the world.
Absolutely.
Right? So, but if you balkanize that, if you break it up, like they did the whole continent of Africa in the Berlin conference, if you do that, then we just easy pickings.
Divided we fall, united we stand. Yeah.
Easy pickings for those who don't want us to come together, right? So I think we need to focus on what is positive and what is good about that country. And there's a lot good about it. Quite honestly, there is, and start respecting that, start understanding that, and start teaching our children. Listen, I went to Government College Ibadan. Government College Ibadan was one of those colleges, federal government colleges. There was one in Umar here. There was one in somewhere in the north. And the idea, I believe, at the time was to get, young Nigerians from all across the country to study together. You in the same boarding school. You go to class together. You become friends and all that kind of stuff. And this year is the 60th anniversary of my starting at GC, at Government College Ibadan.
Wow.
And those of my classmates who are still alive, we're planning a reunion in July. in Nigeria. Now, that is something. I went to school with people from all over the country. You know, when the war broke out, I was heartbroken seeing, my friends, have to leave school and go back to the East in those days. I was heartbroken. I was crying. I could not understand what was going on. That was just way beyond my comprehension. What is going on? Why would it pick on Alex? Why would it pick on what's his name? Why? Why does he have to leave because he's not from this part of the country? No. So, but we do not understand how great that country could be when we pull our resources together. And the biggest resource we have is not oil. The biggest resource we have are the people.
Yeah, people. Absolutely.
Human resource. Yes.
That's the biggest resource we have as a people, and we need to be able to use that to our advantage and realize, like I said earlier, that it's not just about us. It's also the same way they look at us. That's the same way they're going to look at the guy from Kenya. That's the same way they're going to look at the guy from Uganda, from the Congo, because you're all Africans.
Yes, so, and I think that even leads me to my next question. So, just, working in the diplomatic sector, and also being a Nigerian that was posted, a Nigerian American, but of course representing the US government, posted to Nigeria. And just talking to my other diplomatic colleagues. So I wanted to get your opinion on bilateral and regional and multilateral engagements, your advice for young diplomats. So going specifically back to the point where you said you were in the room with Russian diplomats, they were speaking their language. And then when you all now switched to your own native language, they now got uncomfortable. So when we talk about diplomacy and, we're talking about protecting our people, nation, also our information, our culture, our language, preserving it. Language preservation has been very, very rare, even with, I would say, the younger generation now. A lot of my cousins, even when I went back home, they did not speak Yoruba. They were shocked when, even when I did with the Ministry of Health, Minister of Health, permanent sec in Lagos, when I go on site visits, and they're signing bilateral agreements, and then we will have our sidebar conversation, and I'll tell them, I said, Mobo Yoruba, that I was, and I said, about me, so that of course my accent and everything is, but I said, I would prefer for you guys to have this conversation in Yoruba, and then you have a right to negotiate most of those diplomatic circle size. So I'm just talking about bilateral one-to-one, nation agreements. So let's say Nigeria and US, or Nigeria, Russia, whatever the nation be. Most of the time they say Africa is so easy because it will be them dictating that we already draft our agreements, and our people, you even see them. This is the Africa we just had recently, the Africa US Summit. It was held here. They brought all 54 heads of states. So that goes back to my regional when it comes to ECOWAS, as far as West Africa, and then the African Union. So nobody, and I believe it was like 2 or 3 heads of states that were saying no. They refused to come to the US because they said, if this is the Africa Summit, really talking about our resources and everything, I mean, we're the ones that's reaching not just human resource, natural resources, all the things that are circulating in the so-called Western world. Most of those resources were taken from Africa, whether it be gold, whether it be petroleum, whether it be uranium, titanium, copper, cocoa, anything. And I never was comfortable with that. And, because I'm playing, so you served at the Nigerian diplomatic, so I'm very happy to hear that story where you all switched it up. That is very, very rare. And when I used to say those things, and I'll talk to them on the side, and I said, no, you actually have a right, like, you're the host country, but I'm talking from an African point of view. I said, I'm taking off my other diplomatic point of view, but and you can't get mad at the other nation, because once again, in the diplomatic realm, we are making agreements in the best interest of our nation, our people, our information, to preserve what is in the best interest of us, which might not be in the best interest of the other party. So how can you recommend to these young diplomats, one, you know, when you're speaking at those type of things, if they're speaking in, you know, their local language, if you see other nations, like go to the United Nations or go to an Africa summit, you know, how could this be an Africa summit and you're not speaking in your local language?
And there's no African language.
And there's no African language. Even the Francophone countries, they didn't speak in English. They still spoke in Francophone, but they still have their local. I've been to Burkina Faso. I've been to Lomé, Togo. I've been to Dakar, Senegal. I tell people that I said, I know we have our own local languages, and even within Yoruba, Igbo, everything, Bini, you have different even dialects. I said, we have translators, because you cannot say Nigeria is the most populated, and even in the diaspora, there's no way in any diplomatic realm where, we'll say, for example, we have Buhari, they do not have somebody to translate from English to Hausa. And even if they don't, they can bring one of their chief of staff.
Absolutely.
That can be that. So how can we really, you know, really change the narrative? I'm going to really be honest, because and when we're dealing with diplomatic bilateral agreements, let's say, for example, with Iran or Russia, whatever. No, it's not easy. We're not dictating and saying, okay, here, sign this. No, they're like, okay, we're going to read, what is your strategic priorities? We have our own strategic priorities. They have their own negotiation. They'll go back and forth. And they don't make an agreement. Nobody is signing nothing. Do you understand? They don't leave it at name unless they're comfortable. They will now go back, have their own inside meeting, because, you know, it's intelligence. So we don't know who's spying on who's taping who. And most of those bilateral meetings, I mean, especially top high level, you know, meetings where I'm with ambassadors and high chiefs, they'll tell us, okay, you know, put your phones aside. We can't go in the room with our phones because we don't know who's recording and everything. But still, some people sneak stuff. I mean, so I'm gonna be honest. So, so two, how can you preserve? So I'm like, you don't have to. Even me, my mom even told us, no, even when you're negotiating, even for a job, you don't just sign the first thing that they offer you. You negotiate, and you say, okay, I'm gonna think about it. And me, and she always say, if that thing is for you, that thing will wait. You understand? If God said that you're going to be appointed king, he didn't give you a date. Do you understand? So if it not be for today, it would definitely be tomorrow. But you would definitely, because what God said, now find out. So this bilateral agreement has never been in the best interest of Africa. That's one. And that's just, I'm talking about, you know, external multilateral relations. But even within ourselves, we don't have good, you know, open trade agreements. We don't take care of Africa. As far as the African nations, African Union is not even fully funded. Even ECOWAS, Nigeria is the one. I'm gonna be honest, that funds ECOWAS. So we have a long way to go.
Absolutely.
And I want you to truly be honest about the young diplomats. And I'm speaking from another diplomatic, like I've served another diplomatic nation, and I saw how not just Nigeria, but so many. I'm like, so you're just going to this thing. This is our own strategic, and you now sign it. You said something before, about the funding. They will now entice you, we're giving you this development fund for public health for this and that. Those funding are resources from our oil and other stuff that they're sending back to us.
Yes, exactly.
I agree with you 200%. I think, first of all, Tomi, to be very frank, it has to start first with the training the diplomats, right? There should be no reason, you know, why any Nigerian diplomat, you know, should not be able to speak 3 main languages of Nigeria. You know, I would even say the more the merrier. At least you should be fluent enough in Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, in addition to English or whatever other foreign language you want to. So that is key. There was a time when there was this whole, I don't know if it was a policy or if it was just something that we call it Wazobia. Wa meaning come in Yoruba, Zo in Hausa meaning come, the same.
Yes, they even have Wazobia radio to now.
Right,
exactly. Come in Igbo,
So there is no reason why we shouldn't maintain that. And that, listen, children learn languages, and Africans in particular are very language proficient. You know, they will learn. You can put an African in China tomorrow. By the end of next week, they will be speaking Chinese. You know, so we have that aptitude, right? And we can definitely set up a program in which our children, you know, in Nigeria, you know, learn at least 2, 3, and I would even throw in Swahili if you ask me, right? Because it is key. That whole issue of language, we have ignored it, you know, I think to our own peril, you know, because all we do now is, the better you can speak a foreign language, the more intelligent you're supposed to be. That is not true. That is not so at all. You know, language is a means of communication. We need to be able to handle language as such, and especially because it's also a bearer of culture, right? So that language element is very, very important. And if you're going to represent Nigeria anywhere, you should be able to at least speak those 3, you know, major languages. You know, that would be one in terms of training for the new generation of diplomats. In the second place, I think it is also important for us to get our priorities right. When we talk of our interest, how do we define that interest? Have we defined properly what is in the best interest of Nigeria, or do we wait for somebody else to tell us what is our interest? You know, nobody can know what is best for you more than you. So we need to be able to establish that, define it, and say, this is what, you know, and draw a line. Okay, we're negotiating, but this is our starting point, and this is a point of, no return for us. You know,
Exactly.
you know, that's it. You know, if you cross that line, I'm packing up and I'm going. Yeah, I'm not going to sign it. You know, but we are quick to, you know, please the Europeans, the West, and that kind of stuff, and want to be in their good books, while all they're doing is using us, exploiting us, gaining access to our resources. We see what's happening now all over Africa with the Chinese, for example. You know, I mean, that shouldn't be happening in the 21st century. I'm sorry. You know, that means that we have not indeed, at least as a people, as a nation, come together to say, hey, you know, all right, how do we engage all these foreigners coming into our country? What is it they want? What is it they're looking for? What can we offer them, and what can we get from them? You know, but we need to be able to establish our own interests, what are paramount in terms of our interests, and see that, you know, we can safeguard and guarantee those interests in any negotiations we enter into, with whether it's in a bilateral form, whether it's in a multilateral form, and whether it's on an international level or even at the level of the UN. You know, we also, I must say this, you know, we have some natural allies that we have ignored, you know, all along.
Yes.
The Caribbean has 34 countries. How many African nations have diplomatic missions in the Caribbean that are resident there?
Yes.
You know, maybe 1 or 2. You know, Nigeria has one in Trinidad, another one in Jamaica, and that's the end of it. But and Cuba, you know. But guess what? We don't have one in Haiti. Haiti is about 60 million people. We don't have one in the Dominican Republic. We don't have, you know, what do we do? And how can you ignore your natural allies? Because these are people that we are, our cousins.
Yes.
They are family.
And they have Nigerian communities there.
They want to be treated as such.
Yes.
And you can easily trace their route back to Africa. Easy.
So, you know, we're talking of tourism. I mean, there's no bigger place for tourism than the Caribbean right now in the world, right? And, you know, we can learn a lot from what they have achieved in tourism, you know. And on the other hand, there's this, anxiousness, this, everywhere I turn, who ask me, when next you're going to Nigeria, please take me with you. Because they want to go, they want to, it's not, we make it look like it is, we don't care, and we should, we should. We should not, just because, this whole horizontal South-South trade type of, what you call it, everything we measure in economics. And I'm not saying that it's not important, but there is an affinity, historical, cultural. First thing I told my father when I came to St. Martin is that, I found Gary here. They have Gary here.
Cassava.
Cassava, right. He said, huh? Oh, didn't know that. I didn't know that either before I came here. I just ate yam yesterday. So the affinity, the connections are much more than we can even imagine or start.
Imagine, exactly.
Right? So we cannot ignore them, and then go around the world and talk of, we Black, we African, with this, with that. We cannot do that. So I think we need to engage them. I see some movement, especially between some countries in the Caribbean and the AU, with Barbados, for example, quoting Kenya, quoting Rwanda. We need to see the Caribbean as an extension. We love extended family units in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Well, they are our extended family.
Yes. Yes.
And we need to treat them like family, and recognize and accept them as such too. And I think, for diplomatic purposes, like I said, that's 34 votes at the UN.
Right. Right. So the numbers, there's power in numbers and unity. And that even gets me to my next question, Sir, about the capacity and nation building of those in the diaspora. I learned a lot. My last diplomatic overseas post, I was in Jamaica, but I was the Caribbean coordinator for our presidential emergency plan for HIV and TB for the whole Caribbean, as far as for the US government. And my daughter, so one, when you're trying to say your extended family, many Americans put their children in American diplomatic schools. I said, no, the American diplomatic school was all the way across Kingston, and, the traffic and everything. Right next door to the US Embassy was St. Peter and Paul, where was one of the top preps primary schools there. The Minister of Health, a child went there, the permanent sec. So even as far as building relationship with the host country, get diplomatically, I can say, my daughter runs track, like your son there. And that's where she even got the love of running track. When her gym PE teacher saw her running, it was like, oh, we need to get her in track, which Jamaica is one of the best in the world. Yeah. And so learning even. So first of all, when she was even, learning the history of the West Indies and the Caribbean, I couldn't help her because that ain't the history that we learned, right? So I had to hire a tutor who was a retired professor at the University of West Indies. And I learned a lot. And they even have Calabar School. They have a village.
Exactly.
For Calabar. Yes. I learned Nigerian history. I would have never. This taught me how with homework. So you said a key thing about learning language. So I want to take it back there as far as nation building and preserving our culture. Even foreign service diplomat. I've met Oyinbo diplomats, white Americans that speak Yoruba, that speak Hausa, because, but then even the foreign service, even one of my diplomats that, is supposed to a Spanish speaking country, you have to take classes, you have to take courses, because they know that language is a good way, do you understand, to be able to negotiate. So one, I think, yes, it should be a requirement for a foreign service that you got to speak it, at least understand it, for goodness sake. So that's number one. And then, number two, going back to history, what is being taught at our school at that foundational level? What is being taught? And is the true history, because we have a very rich African history. It's not just Nigerian history, but rich African history, and just the connections between each of our countries. Before, just like you said, the Western Berlin Conference, we were different kingdoms. If you look at the history, the historical, you'll see Niger Kingdom, or you'll see, you know, so and that kingdom will contain many countries, you know. So even in biblical times, you will see a king over 133 provinces of kingdoms. So just to put it into perspective, when we're talking about history and showing how connected we are, because, for example, for Ghana, they have avenues where now they're accepting a lot of African Americans. I have a lot of African Americans that have moved home. One diplomat, he was a lawyer, he worked at the Department of Justice. He's now living in Ghana. He also has a Caribbean background. He opened up a Caribbean restaurant. He said he's living his best life. He's never felt at home, even here in America. He was always scared. Even this is a lawyer, somebody, a top diplomat, was working in DC. He grew up in Chicago with me, but will always be scared, you know, that he will be a victim of violence and be pulled over. He'll be at the wrong place at the wrong time, but just because of the color of his skin. So so the strategic question of capacity building, diaspora, you know, nation building, but not just for Nigerians, but others. Now that we have for the science, so my scientific side comes out. When many of my friends, even today I was at church, one guy said, I took my DNA test and I found I'm Nigerian. I said, I already know. You know, we're the most populated country in Africa. So most of y'all, you know, they will say it. That out of, you know, I think it's 4 out of 6 African Americans, they said, you know, will be Nigerian for sure, or at least have some high percentage of Nigeria. TD Jakes too. So many people have come out and say, oh, they've taken their DNA test and they saw that they are Nigerians. What are the things that we can entice our brother and sister to come back home? We don't need foreign direct investments. If all of us in the diaspora truly come and join hands and unite, Africa can be way better than any of the Western countries, any day, anytime, because we have expertise, and just like you said before, in the arts and engineering and everything. But if we do not come together and unite, many of those Nollywood, Netflix film now are not even recorded in Nigeria because of the poor infrastructures of light and things like that. But how can we be able to unite and be able to be a lifeline to create that environment to go home? You understand, sir? Because if we don't do that, and starting from policy, you said it before about diaspora voting is very strategic. When working in the diplomatic realm, it doesn't matter how much you do in the private sector. The private sector still needs government. You cannot make sustainable changes. These changes that we're talking about, if we cannot influence policy, if we don't have a right to vote for the right to lead us, not just at the federal level, at the state, at the local government level, at the regional level, even at the African Union level, then we have a long way to go. And then my last question, I know is levels to this, so not just bilateral, regional, then also at the African Union, we don't have like a diaspora unit, a diaspora chair. If you look at Israel, given an example, Israel, why the Jewish people are extremely united is that they have a ministry of diaspora affairs. As a matter of fact, they're one of the only countries in the world that have a ministry of diaspora. I think it's them and Australia. I'm not sure. It's only 2 countries because I said, don't we have, there has to be, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have a very strong, united, I mean, even though I'm Nigerian, if I do my DNA and I said that, I have a percentage that I'm somewhat Jewish, you will see how they will embrace me. So, we don't have that, we don't even have that political platform at the African Union level, at the ECOWAS level, and even at the individual host country levels where diaspora is not Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because that's a different level. That's like our State Department, for example. That's different from diaspora affairs. So how specifically can we build our capacity and unite to strategically be able to influence the transformational changes that we need in Nigeria? So over to you.
Well, that's
good question. Very, very good question.
That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Yeah, but they're very important questions that you raise. First of all, let me say this. You alluded to, African Americans flocking to Ghana. I see that every single day here. Now they're looking at places like Rwanda, and other places in Africa. But again, it's, where people feel welcomed, where you will go where you feel welcomed, where you know that, you will not be treated unfairly, you will not be treated as a stranger, because one of the biggest appeals that Africa has for the African diaspora in general, that's African Americans, Caribbean people, Brazilians who are Black, etc., is the fact that when they land in any part of Africa, they don't look different, right? So they are instinctively
like us. Yeah.
seen as one of us. I'll give you a joke. Well, it's not really a joke. This really happened, right? A friend of mine from Nigeria goes back to Nigeria with a friend, an African American, goes back home with him and all that kind of stuff. And he was from maybe Chicago area too. And, they got to Lagos, and this friend of mine started speaking Yoruba and that kind of stuff. And of course, the immigration officials start, welcome back home and all that kind of stuff. And started speaking to his friend, the American, in Yoruba. And of course, he couldn't speak nor understand Yoruba, so he didn't know what they were saying. He was looking at the friend. And immediately, those officials thought, oh, this is one of those JJC pretending not to know how to speak the language anymore.
JJC, Johnny just come, for those
Right,
that
right, and
I've been called that many times until they and then I now tell them no more boy Yoruba. I just can't speak.
you see, so the point I'm trying to make with that is that, that instant integration into the society, into the community, where you don't have to, you're not looked upon anymore through the of your skin, that releases a lot of stress. So you're home in a sense.
That's
you
true.
don't have to behave in any particular way when you're stopped by the police, because the police, the person is going to think is that you're one of me, you're one of us.
Yes.
Right. So that is a big factor for many of them to want to relocate back home. But like I said earlier, we have to create the atmosphere and the environment that is welcoming enough for them to come home. Not that I want to say give them any special treatment, but so what? So what if we did? They are family. We treat family like that. So why can't we tap into their reservoir? They're a big resource too. African Americans,
yes,
were to start investing in Africa, guaranteed. You know what transformation that's going to be both for Africa and for them. From what I read somewhere, the African American as a group in the US command, maybe they will be ranked about the 5th largest economy in the world.
Yes. Yes.
Right? At least in the top 10 in the world.
yes,
Yes.
yep.
From an economic standpoint, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you imagine that, and coupling that with the immense market we have in Africa, with all the possibilities we have in Africa, it's a win-win for everybody. Why don't we do it? Why do we keep, being blindfolded by all this Western hype and all this, why can't we tap into that? It only takes one country to start doing it, Once one country starts doing it and starts doing it successfully, all the others will start emulating. We like to copy, what we believe is a, winning formula. Yeah. All the other countries will fall in line. Now, of course, we have to be mindful of the fact that the Europeans ain't going to take that line down because they don't want that. Not in their interest.
Absolutely.
But let us fight for our own interests first. Let's recognize that. Let's identify what those interests are, and let's go after them.
Yes.
Right. So that'd be one. Two, in terms of
and so can you also talk about even more for many people that don't know about Festac? That was the famous festival back then that you talked about. My mom, she was actually one of the chief catering officers during the Festac.
Oh, really?
And I think that is very important to talk about that, especially because how we are known for our Afro beats. You talk about Burna Boy, our entertainment, and that is also a way, because she also said during Festac, they were able to build houses. She was even saying that her request of not being able.
Festac town in Lagos.
Yes, there's a Festac town, and that she was not able to get one of those allocations that so many of her friends were able to, and a lot of those African Americans, some of them even married, came home, found their spouse during that time, and even continued to stay in Nigeria, up until now, and have descendants. So what type of things, even if we can't do it at the diplomatic level, but that was, even a lot of private sector organizations were involved in that. We can take it from the entertainment level of enticing people, even in the real estate level, which everybody wants to invest. You can invest anywhere. Like Donald Trump, he has Trump Tower all over the world. How can we show them that, this is an untapped resource for them to be an economic strong house? And also, how can we make sure that they have buy-in? You can't have buy-in if you're not a citizen. They are truly our citizens. They were stolen and they were put into slavery. And one of my African American friends said, okay, Tomi, you have a flag, you have a nation. We don't have a place to come home. Like Ghana, now they're even giving them, access to have dual citizenship, which is also allowed here in the US. So from that diplomatic standpoint, Sir, do you think that will also be an enticing way for them to close the gap from the history that was stolen from them, to say, look, any African nation that you want to, be a part of, we are open to you being a citizen, because they are our relatives.
Yeah, well, for the love of me, I cannot understand why we haven't done that already.
Exactly.
Because, those are very simple, easy things to do. Other than the fact that, quite honestly, the whole issue, that's making this seem almost a Herculean task is ignorance, right? We, Africa, are very ignorant of what is happening on this side of the world.
Yes.
Right. We need to admit that, if you don't go to school and get educated and study a particular subject, you may not even know what is happening right here. And you don't know how that connects to your own history, right? You mentioned earlier, some of these historical figures. Jaja of Opobo died in a place right here in the Caribbean called St. Vincent.
Wow.
It took me years to find out that, and that his people demanded that his body be returned to Opobo, and the British then put him on a ship and shipped him via the Canary Islands in Spain back to Opobo. Jaja of Opobo, right? Where do you find that in any history that we're taught?
Nowhere.
None, no way.
See, now these are the things that really make me feel like we have been so brainwashed to the point that we ignore, to our own peril, we ignore our history, we ignore those who we are naturally connected to, and they want to be recognized. They want to be, it's a two-way street, actually. So I understand that, but there's no reason why. I don't know, for example, what is happening now at the tertiary level, but there was a time when you had all these student exchanges, right?
Yes.
Nigerian students went to Legon, you know, and Ghanaian students came to UI.
To Nigeria, yes.
Right. Even at the secondary school level, we used to have Government College Ibadan. We used to have sporting and cultural exchanges with schools in Dahomey. At the time, it was called Dahomey. That's Benin Republic, you know, and right up to Ghana, you know. And everybody used to look forward to being able to jump on the truck and drive up to, you know, Benin Republic or to
Ghana, the Gold Coast.
Yes. But I don't know if that has been done today. You know, hardly do we even want our children to go from Ibadan to Enugu or from Lagos to Shina. You know, everything is now so localized. One thing that I heard also which really, really upset me a lot is that the teaching of history has been removed from the curriculum in Nigerian schools. Now, how do you explain that?
Exactly.
How do you explain that? How can you raise a nation without a teaching of their history?
Without the history. And we have a rich
culture.
history. And you said something, Sa, I don't want you to pass that point about also traveling, because travel is learning, you know, even within history books. And I tell people, I said, because I was a diplomat, I used to volunteer for a lot of the site visits. So out of like the 36 states that we have, I've probably been to like almost 20. And I was just so amazed. Like when I went to Niger, Mina, you see the waterfalls. I've been to Kaduna, and I'm talking about outskirts like Kafachan. You know, I like to not just go into the city. I want to go to the country. Even when I went on polio vaccination in I think Osun States, and I was talking to, you know, the Minister of Health then, and he said, "Oh, were you inside?" You know, I said, "No, I wasn't in Oshobo. I was like in Bolu Waduro, like all those spots were like LGAs. I would later come back to the city to sleep because of security reasons and everything. But as far as the work, I would like to go out and really talk to the people. You know, if it's antenatal day, if I'm talking about prenatal care, I want to just pop up and see, okay, you know, and that was shocking because they would say, oh yes, you know, our treatment, we're treating all these pregnant mothers. It's a lie. A lot of the stuff that they said that was going on, when you actually go to that local government level, you will see that things were not going on. You will see pregnant women on the floor waiting because the doctor, he's not making enough money. He hasn't been paid salary on time. So he has his own private clinic. So he will wake up in the morning, go to the private clinic from maybe 8 to 12. Then he will come to the general hospital or the primary health center from like 12 to 2. And whoever he sees within that period, and they will line up from 8 a.m. because they want to, you know, it's just a mess. So, you know, traveling, as going back to my point of traveling is learning history. You know, they used to have, what did they call it? Excursions. I had, you know, I'm trying to think of, you know, like, that's not, you know, that's not even a requirement now. Like before it was a requirement. That's why I was saying, even before we started this show, is that you all really enjoyed the real Nigeria, and not just exchange. You mentioned about exchange within other African countries, which are important, but Nigeria was so strategic to the world that my cardiologist trained, he did his residency. He's one of the top cardiologists at the University of Chicago Hospital in Jos, Plateau State, that you talked about. I met another physician, a medical doctor, who also did an exchange program in Ibadan. You understand? So, and they speak, I was shocked. I said, the guy, he was speaking Hausa. The other guy, he was speaking Yoruba. This is a Caucasian white guy. And they got their training, and they said they got one of the best training. That was one of the best experience that they experienced. So if other people are appreciating our history and our culture, how come that history, which is very disheartening, has been taken out? Things like excursion, traveling to see other communities different than yours, because Nigeria is very diverse.
It is.
And very beautiful. Why how can we prioritize that, sir?
Well, I don't have all the answers. To tell you the truth, I don't. But what I do know is that it is ill-advised to do that, to take out history. I am for refining, modernizing the whole curriculum that is being taught in our schools. I'm also for making sure that the history that we are taught is not their history, not, as they would say here, his story, right? But ours, right? And like I said, I went to school in Nigeria right up to when I was 17 years old, and never knew anything about Jaja who died in the Caribbean. And and that's just one example. You mentioned about the Calabar School in Jamaica and that kind of stuff. I have Jamaican friends. When I tell them, I said, that Calabar School that you have in Kingston, you know that it's named after city, Nigeria, where I come from? They said, no, that can be, but it's right there, And then they said, oh, wow, I didn't know that.
They didn't know, sir. And it was not up until this year, to give an example, that the Nigerian ambassador on our Independence Day went, to the Foreign Affairs Minister in Jamaica, and they did a visit in Calabar, and they were teaching them about Nigerian history and even where Calabar is in Cross River State. They had no clue. So even we have a role that even if they didn't know, the Nigerian ambassador, she's very good. I can't remember her name, but she went the extra mile and said, no, I think that it'd be nice to go there. So that was one of, her visits on her tour for Nigerian Independence Day, bringing more awareness of Nigeria to the Caribbean culture.
Right.
She did that. She started her tour that launched at the Calabar High School. And I was like, wow. So it took all these years for people to connect the dots.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true. And you know what's even more, interesting, if I may put it that way, is the fact that the links. I always said this, right, and that's from my own personal experience. That one of the reasons, and that's why I said ignorance is one of the biggest obstacles we have to coming together. When we meet our African American, our Caribbean brothers and sisters, we very seldom meet in our respective homes. So we meet them in the US at college, we meet them in Europe, studying or working together, but we seldom meet them like in Jamaica, like you did, or they come to Lagos or to Enugu, we don't meet there, and that's where the travel that you mentioned earlier comes in. So when you meet somebody in a space that is not yours, your behavior is different. If you meet me at home, you won't see me wearing tux. You won't see me wearing what you call it, shoes or boots or whatever. You'll probably see me in my slippers. You'll probably see me in a t-shirt. You'll see me home, right? That is the real me, not the one that you meet in a restaurant or in a conference or at school, all tied up, right? That's not the real me. The real me is the one you meet home, right? So if I'm drinking Gary, I offer you Gary to drink.
Exactly.
Right? That is the real me. Right.
And that's where the nation building starts.
Exactly.
When you meet them where they are.
Right.
Yes.
So
that's true.
When we meet outside, the relationship that we build cannot be as strong as when we meet at each other's homes.
That's true.
Right. And I think we don't realize that. I saw that quickly because I know this. I studied in Spain, right? And I had friends, going to school, but I can't remember any one of my Spanish friends inviting me to their homes. for all the years that I studied in Spain.
Wow.
Right? But we meet at school, we go to a restaurant, we go to the disco, etc., etc. But I never knew where they lived. I never went inside their house, sat in their sitting room. I never did. So how do you spend 6, 8 years in a place, make friends, and you don't know anything about their homes? So the relationship remains superficial.
Very superficial. Absolutely.
We're friends, we exchange, what I call it, emails and this and that up to now. But, it just dawned on me that, hey, I never met this guy's,
Family. Yeah.
Yeah, I was never in their home, why? And the same applies to us, and when I say us, I'm not just saying, the Nigerians and the, brothers and sisters in the diaspora. I'm also, even when you come to think of it, talk about Nigeria itself. How many of your classmates, how many of your friends have you been to their homes? Home.
Their real home.
Yes, where they sleep, where they wake up, where they eat, where they,
And for us, also putting it from the diaspora point of view, how many of your close friends from other cultures, whether it be African Americans and so forth, have we taken back to Nigeria, which my sister, she was able to do, and I have done, even, at the diplomatic level, I'll say, oh, when we're requesting deployers, I'll say, oh, one of my classmates, okay, we went to Emory together. I'll say, oh, Darrell, and he was working for National Institute of Health, and he came to Nigeria. And, I brought him to my home. It's different from coming to Nigeria as a diplomat. They put you in a hotel.
Exactly.
I took him to my home. I said, look, now I'm going to show you the real Nigeria. We went to a suya joint. We went to a place where we went and killed. We had live band. He had the ball of his life. I probably got in trouble because I was supposed to get it cleared by the security. But anyways, we had our fun time. My sister, she's a part of sorority here. She took her sorority friends and they did a tour. They first started in Morocco, then they went to Ghana, and then they went to Nigeria because she wanted to show them that Africa is very different. Exactly. You understand? And that even within Nigeria, we're very different.
Oh, yeah,
and definitely. Took them to the fun things, like they went to Nigerian wedding. Yes. They went to, an Afrobeat concert. And now, even after that first initial visit, a lot of them now travel on their own and go back to Ghana, go back to Nigeria on their own. They've made other friends, I call, and I'm like, wait, here or whatever. My cousin, I'm like, okay, they didn't even tell me, so we want to introduce it. We're your real original family. But it brings me so much joy. And you said a very key point, which is important. If I have never even been to your home, I can say, oh, my friends that, are from the Latino heritage or Pacific Island, I can say, okay, I've been to their home. They're from Guam. I say, good morning, half a day. If they're from American Samoa, Talofa, you will know their greetings. Their eyes light up like, oh my goodness. Like, lady, she's one of us.
Yes.
So it is
absolutely
important. Yes, sir.
People's language goes straight to their heart. There's no doubt about it.
Of course.
People's language goes straight to their heart, and they feel
their
like
food, everything.
Yeah, absolutely. They feel like you're part of them. There's no doubt about it.
I remember while I was still at the External Affairs in Lagos, right? I used to wear a beard, right? And they would refer to me. People used to call me Ojuku. Because they said I looked like him because of the beard, right? So, and there were people who, some Igbo-speaking friends of mine, who initially thought I was Igbo, right? And the smattering of Igbo that I learned while studying in Jos, when they start, I say, kedu na odimano. And all that kind of stuff. But by the third, fourth sentence, I cannot continue. Now they get angry because they think I am deliberately snubbing them. and they will continue to speak to me in Igbo.
In Igbo, thinking
Yeah,
that.
because you sound very, very Igbo.
I'll take it any day. I'll take it any day.
You sound very, very Igbo. It will be hard for somebody to believe that you just learn Igbo, the way you respond and the way you sound.
Well, because as a child, you're growing up and all your friends are speaking that language, you pick it up, and
That's true.
My recipe for bringing us closer together, really, I think every Nigerian child must be given the opportunity before they reach the age of 12 to visit all the so-called geopolitical zones, especially during their holidays, rotate them. So this year you go into Kaduna, you staying with a Hausa family.
Yes.
True.
Right? Next year you're going to Takot, and you're staying with an Igbo family. The following year you're coming to Abeokuta, like that. By the time they are 12 years old, one, they will know Nigeria. Two, they will have friends all over Nigeria. And three, they'll be able to speak the languages.
And as well have the best interest of Nigeria in their heart as well. Because that relationship they have built all along will make them understand absolutely that we are one. Yep.
Yes.
That's true.
It's a relationship.
That's true patriotism. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So, but who is going to allow their children to go to a family in Panchan? Who is going to allow their child to go to Umuahia, on vacation for 7 weeks? Who is going to allow their child to come from Sokoto to come to Abeokuta or Oyo to spend 7 weeks? That is where the problem lies, But if we think of it seriously and we're serious about building a new Nigeria, for me, that is a recipe we have to look at seriously, because and galvanize us as a people. And by the time they enter secondary school, they are Nigerians. They're not Yoruba, Hausa, or Igbo. They are Nigerians, right?
Exactly.
Right? And then
absolutely,
their age mate with whom they stayed in Sokoto or in Takot or in Oyo. In these days, with the technology that we have, they're on the phone with them every single minute.
Yes, they keep in touch.
Yeah, they're on. Not like in our own time when you couldn't even, having a phone was a super.
You had to write a letter or telegraph.
Telegram? No, telegrams were bad news. You only send a telegram when there was bad news that needed your attention, like somebody died in the family. That's when you get a telegram. You had to write letters, express mail.
Express. And how express was that express?
Exactly.
Well, once again, I just want to remind that we are with Nigerian in Diaspora, America's radio and TV. We believe in respecting diversity, as well as unity for all Nigerian development. It's been quite a very, very great conversation. Very, very eloquent conversation. Very, very educative. Very, very enlightening. I learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. Our VVVIP, sir. Our representative, ambassador, name it all, sir. Thank you so much for your knowledge, for your ideas, for all that you have shared with us, and we will still continue to reach out to you. So please, please, we'll reach out to you to ask you to open up your schedule. We really, really do appreciate it. We really do appreciate it. Elderly statesman, and thank you so much. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Tomi. Any closing comments?
No, just you said it all. You're a statesman. You're a diplomat. You've lived all over the world, different regions. I really I just wanted to end on the note of, we really need you all to be a lifeline to this younger generation, especially younger generation of diplomats. many of us as a melting pot have been fleeing and going home, but there's no place like home. No matter all of us in the diaspora, we are still like, if you talk to a lot of people, they are very homesick. A lot of the elderly that have retired and have come, and they had their children here like us, first, second generational diaspora members in the Americas or in Europe. They cannot go back home. This is the time for them to enjoy and be that elder statesman because of your wisdom. No matter how much we go to school, our wisdom can never pass yours, never. So
Absolutely.
we need you, and we want you to. This should be a beginning of our continued dialogue with the Nigerian and diaspora community, and just a lot of the gems of wisdoms, examples that you gave about language preservation, about engaging our other diaspora, African Americans, other, Caribbean, brothers and sisters. How can we, create policies where government leaders cannot, go abroad for medical treatment, but instead build the health systems there. They can't send their children abroad for education. How can we bring back our rich African history? How can we bring back travel and excursion? I mean, you laid out at least off my head 7 or even more, 10 different top strategic priority areas where I believe moving forward is not just having this dialogue, but what are the next steps to really put those strategic priorities together and engage, because you have the best of both worlds. Now you are at the Caribbean, we're here in the America region. So for example, we can now say, okay, these are our strategic priorities in the diaspora. We want to unite. We can be able to approach the U.S. government, African Affairs, Foreign Affairs chair. We can be able to, approach, African American, companies and agencies. Like when we talk about, Festac, they have the famous Essence Festival, which they did actually host for the first time out of America in South Africa, Durban. Those are the type of things that if Nigeria was safe and everything, Nigeria would have been even a better place to host that type of festival. So absolutely. I'm hoping that from this important, those that are listening, that will listen to this, that will say, okay, within whatever sector you are, how can we be able to take one of these strategic priorities and make a reality for a better tomorrow, for our children, for our children's children, so we can create that giant of Africa, which you called it, which is our prophetic name, that we need to be redeemed and put forward. However, we need to make sure that those priorities are truly implemented. So big salute to you, sir. I learned
thank you very much,
from you, and I thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All of you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm here anytime you need to, for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be necessarily this, but I'm in touch with Collins almost every day. So
thank you very much, sir. I really do appreciate, sir. I really do appreciate.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you very much. Once again, thank you very much for making it possible in Nigerians in Diaspora Organization Radio and TV. It's our pleasure to host you today and for you to be able to share all that you did with us. Thank you, Ambassador Uncle Fabian Badejo. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tomi.
Have a good evening, sir.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Right.
You too, sir.
All right.